it's really good if you have people around you that you trust, which is a basic element in the filmmaking process, or anything really. And goes for any film you're making. The trust is important between your director of photography, your assistant director, co-producers, that sort of thing. What I mean is that if it's a passion project and everyone's invested in it the way you are, that's really rewarding. That's something very special. You feel you've gone through some sort of experience together. I've been lucky over the years to have had a few of those. Just recently with Silence, for example. Mean Streets to a certain extent, although a lot of that were, a lot of the crew of Mean Streets, I learned how to put a film together through Roger Corman's crew. But they felt the energy of the whole thing, and they knew somehow, because of my enthusiasm and just passion for making the picture, they kind of were infected by it in a way. But I think primarily it's great when the crew is tight enough and like a real working unit that feels that they're creating something special, with you. There's an alternative, of course, and that is that it becomes something impersonal. It's a bigger set, a bigger situation. But still, even there, people are doing very, very hard work, whether it's making sure the rain machine works perfectly or that sort of thing. But as long as you have your inner core of key people sharing that desire to make this film, sharing it, and ideally not necessarily overdoing their role, so to speak, but pulling it all together to help you get what you want or what you think you want. Because very often, as I say, when you get it to the set or when you get it to a location and you've designed something and you're working with the actors and things start changing, sometimes you lose your sense of exactly what the shot should be. If the people around you, your key people, understand what you want based on conversations before you started shooting, reading the script, designs, all kinds of, especially if you're on location where people are working together, eating together, and that sort of thing, you begin to get a sense of who you could depend on, and they would be able to tell you and help you through the hard times, really. So this is something that's really a key factor. It's a core unit. Now, when I say a passion project, that core unit could be the whole crew, because it's a smaller crew. Usually it's a lower budget, it's a different thing. But when you're on a bigger picture, that small core is really your life core, your lifeline. I come from a time, too, when there was a lot of experimenting with movie making, where we actually thought at times, although I don't know, I didn't try it, but that in the 60s, there were experiments in making what they call collective decisions, collective filmmaking. As the director, you can't score points with false modesty. You have to assume the responsibility of being the one who makes those guiding decisions. But you also have to remember that every single person on your set plays a role in making your film. You need them. You need them, and you need their dedication. You need their expertise. Don't forget, it's what Stanley Kubrick said. They said, what's the hardest part of directing? He says, getting out of the car in the morning. Because once you get out of the car, you're besieged with questions, and usually you get out of the car, there are problems. And like I used to tell my AD, I say, I get out of the car and look at them and say, aren't you smiling? I said, no. And he said, what is it? I said, well, what can't we do today? And you just get used to that. You get used to it. What it is that it's true. Getting out of the car begins a process. I'd always said I wanted to do an article and these days I guess would be online or something, but just have a little recorder on me taping all the questions that you're asked, including have you got your right shoes? What would you want? Do you want coffee now? An actor coming up to you talking about, I really disagree in this line at this point, changes the entire character. Maybe I shouldn't have done this, and it goes on and on, to the biggest problems, to the smallest minutiae and tiniest minutiae. And I always wanted to do it, but that's why it's always advisable to have less questions. Less questions, the better during the day. Unnecessary ones should be eliminated. And you have to cut through all of that, cut through all of them, all of the equipment and everything, to get back to the idea you had in your head when you thought it was it was possibly a good suggestion to take up to make this particular film, you know? And so you got to focus, and you have to eliminate everything else around it. And I don't think you should be, there's no way to say don't be intimidated by the enormity of the machine, so to speak, because very often certain kinds of films, it is that way. But particularly because technology of today, I don't think you should let that stop you. In other words, if you feel you want to say something, you feel you want to express it through visual means, you have the technology to do it yourself. You know, now that could build exponentially to a bigger production. And there's always a way of, because of that, it'll always be a learning process, how to deal with the machine, you know, but don't let the machine get in the way. And also don't let the machine tell you what you can't do. I mean, you may not be able to do pretty much anything, but don't let them tell you you can't. There's a lot of very knowledgeable people, really good people, especially if they like working with you, et cetera. They're going to try to find a way to get what you want or what you think you want until you have to get what you need, as they say. This, of course, takes us back to the point where there's a core, a group, 3 or 4 people that deal with trust and excitement about what you're doing, and trying to help you achieve it. It doesn't matter. I mean, yes, it'd be good to have. It works in a way with the core of people together with you, working for the same goal, and then it branches out. Then they have a core of people. This one has a core. This one has a core, and they're all working together. That's the ideal, you know. Particularly when you're in a location somewhere, you get there and there's a typhoon. Seriously. I was surprised. We were shooting Silence in Taiwan. And one day, towards the end of the shoot, there was a scene that we were doing by a stream with these rocks. It was quite dangerous to walk on because it was slippery. But it turned out to be the hottest day of the year, and I started to pass out. It was really very, very difficult. And this was towards the end of the shoot, because the weather there sometimes is too hot to shoot in the summer. So the next day, we had a scene on a beach in which people were being martyred, thrown on funeral pyres and that sort of thing. And they drove me out to the location. And mind you, this is after a day of intense heat and humidity. We're going further out in location, further. I've noticed it's beginning to rain. I, don't think anything of it. And I get there, finally get into this little trailer they had for me, or bus, actually. It was a little bus. And suddenly, the door opens, and I feel the place is rocking, And suddenly the door opens, and these 2 figures come in, and they're covered in slickers. And they're wet, completely soaked, and they look up. And it was my assistant director and my director of photography. I didn't recognize them. And what are they doing? They're making everything wet. What's happened? And they pointed out to me, they looked up and said, we could do it. We could shoot today. First of all, I never in my head that we weren't going to shoot. Secondly, they said there was going to be the tail end of a typhoon, but not like this. But thirdly, they were so beaten that I didn't even recognize them, and yet they were out there ready to pull it together and shoot, and which is what we did. We did it. We did it rapidly because the weather dictated these things, the movement of the crew and the camera moves, the crane, etc. But also it helped because we were able to do the same because these are different elements that come together. The dialogue, it was pretty much a scene without dialogue, that sort of thing. And also because the people playing the parts, the Japanese, were so committed to playing these parts that as soon as you said action, as soon as you started rolling that camera, they're tied to a stake and being set on fire. I mean, they were already there in the scene. There was no way and there was no trying to coax these actors. They were on, you see. The crew was set. You know, they were going to shoot, and that was it. You know, whether I liked being in the rain or in the typhoon or not, we were doing it.